Accidents happen every day, and things that sometimes cost millions of dollars are being destroyed because someone managed to flush them down the toilet. This is probably how half of the iPhones that currently exist will die at some point. However, if you study this question, you can find stories about how things that cost a lot of money were destroyed, lost or damaged in rather pathetic and discouraging circumstances, either because people did not know the real value of these things, or because they simply did not care about them at all. Before we start, don't forget to subscribe, put a bell not to miss new videos and like this video. Attention, faint-hearted, afraid of heights and people with weak vestibular apparatus, it is better for you not to look further. Platinum, which the Spaniards threw into the sea. Platinum is one of the metals with a fantastic reputation. Despite the fact that it is not as brilliant as gold and is not able to kill werewolves like silver, platinum occupies its own special niche among precious metals. Prices of precious metals fluctuate constantly, however, at the moment, 1 ounce or 28.3 grams of platinum will cost you at least $1,400. The most interesting is that if you go to the 16th century, you would find that platinum hasn't been valued at all there. When the Spaniards first discovered platinum in Ecuador, they initially considered it immature gold, due to the similarity and density of the two metals. Moreover, no one paid any attention to this metal except the counterfeiters. Taking advantage of the similarity and density of platinum and gold, they used it to create gold coins that were incredibly difficult to distinguish from the original. The problem became so widespread that both the Spanish and English governments did not know how to deal with it. However, the Spaniards finally came up with the most stupid solution of the problem and threw every piece of platinum that was in the country into the sea in order to get rid of the counterfeiting coins problem. They could not imagine that in about 100 years this metal would be so precious that the roads of Colombian cities where the metal was discovered, and ignored, would be literally lined with gold when platinum veins were found under these cities. Cognac that was dropped, ruining the world record. Cocktails are a serious business, and bartenders around the world create new, amazing drinks every day in the hope that humanity will never get tired of getting drunk. One of the strangest and most interesting stories about mixing cocktails is the story of an endless competition to create the most expensive cocktail of all time. Salvatore Calabrese, a bartender from a London club called Playboy Club, was preparing his cocktail, worth $7,800, which was supposed to set a world record. At this time, the customer who ordered this cocktail asked if he could take a closer look at an incredibly rare and insanely expensive bottle of cognac called Clos de Griffier Vieux from 1788, on the basis of which the bartender prepared his cocktail. This bottle cost $78,000. You've probably guessed what would happen next, haven't you? The customer, for some inexplicable reason, that was holding an item worth almost $100,000, dropped the bottle, which fell, broke and splashed all over the floor. But the worst part was that El Salvador had not yet added this cognac to the cocktail, which meant that not only the literally irreplaceable cognac, but also its attempt to set a world record, had been smashed to smithereens. Nevertheless, showing true gentlemanly behavior typical of the entire Playboy family, Salvador forgave the client. He said that he could not remain angry with a man who wanted to appreciate such a magnificent bottle of cognac. The fact that the bottle was insured also contributed to El Salvador forgiving the customer so quickly. The chandelier, into which someone threw a shoe. Chandeliers are one of the most luxurious signs of wealth. Some consider them pompous, but for others they are beautiful. Regardless of what you think of them, you most likely know that they cost a lot of money. One of these chandeliers, located in a Kuwaiti shopping center called 360 Mall, was seriously damaged when a teenager decided to throw a flip-flop at it for no reason. This incomprehensible destructive act is irritating in itself, but the choice of shoes for a teenager who threw them into a chandelier is truly infuriating. Rubber flip-flops. This teen was wearing rubber flip-flops. The chandelier, which cost an estimated $1.8 million, was severely damaged as a result of this flip-flop throwing. Despite the fact that American sources have covered this story with a flip-flop in detail, to find out the fate of this teenage thrower, you need to turn to the Kuwaiti news media. Unfortunately, despite the fact that the teenager caused damage estimated at hundreds of thousands of dollars with his ugly rubber shoes, he was released after only making a reprimand. Spaceship in a video game, valued at $9,000. If you still think that there is nothing serious in video games, we invite you to dive into the world of EVE Online, a massively multiplayer online game where you can literally spend thousands of dollars and hours piloting virtual spaceships. The game is very popular on the internet for its real economy, due to which you can buy things for online games for real money. Take, for example, Plex, renewal of the pilot's license. This item from the world of EVE Online can be purchased for regular, real money, and it will allow you to extend the time of your game for 30 days. Plex is a valuable item that can be exchanged or sold in a game, as well as sold to people in the real world, for real money. However, the most annoying thing is the fact that Plex can be destroyed or stolen in a game. In other words, you can spend $1,000 on Plex, and some idiot will blow it up for no apparent reason, and you won't be able to get your money back. We don't use this example as the worst thing that can happen, because it has already happened once. One of the most expensive ships in the game is the so-called Ghost, Revenant, a spacecraft whose real cost is approximately $9,000. Although it's not the most expensive item on this list, you should understand that it was most likely the brainchild and pride of some player. The player who lost it invested hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of their time in it. And that's not to mention that within the game, this spaceship was hundreds of times more expensive, literally, than any other thing you can buy in the game. So why was it destroyed? Based on what other players think about this case, it was destroyed for no apparent reason. Imagine you woke up one morning and your car has been destroyed because someone thought it would be funny. When you was trying to tell someone about it, they shrugged, laughed, and wrote an article about how much money you just lost. The strangest thing is that these things happen all the time in EVE Online. In the past, players destroyed in-game items worth thousands of real dollars just because they could. The worst thing is that in the EVE universe, if you lose something, you don't have insurance, you can't get your money back, and if someone decides to destroy your $9,000 spaceship, you can't do anything about it. Terrible. The accident, which destroyed nearly a dozen sports cars. Sports cars are the main status symbol. They are cool, expensive, and instantly recognizable. Even if you're not a car enthusiast, you have to admit that it's just sad to see these works of automotive engineering art, worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, lying in a crumpled pile of metal. The accident, which occurred in Japan, in which no one was seriously injured, was recognized as the most expensive car accident in history, when 10 cars collided on the way to the exhibition of supermachines, held in Hiroshima. In the course of this accident, $3 million worth of cars were smashed. We already mentioned at the beginning of this article that accidents often occur all over the world, but in this case, several drivers were accused of violating traffic rules, and some of them, who were later interviewed, openly admitted that they had no idea how powerful their cars were. In other words, several Ferraris worth millions of dollars were destroyed just because the idiots who were driving could not resist posturing on the way to an event specially organized so that they could show off their cars, which they did not know how to drive properly. However, this is not the most discouraging way to destroy beautiful sports cars. Oh, no, in order to be completely upset about this, you need to go to the United States. Rare cars sawn and sent to the scrap. The money for clunkers system, officially known as the government-designed bonus system for recycling old cars, was a great way to get rid of older, less fuel-efficient cars on the road. For the most part, the plan worked well, and we won't go into all the details. However, when there was data about which cars people handed over for scrap, sharp-eyed motorists noticed something. Some of the cars that people thought were worthless were actually very rare vintage cars that a suitable car collector would give an arm and a leg for. A blog called Jalopnik noted that among the hundreds of completely useless destroyed cars were real jewels. For example, someone actually scrapped a Bentley Continental R, a car that costs more than $300,000 on average, and of which only 1,290 were produced. Another person passed the Aston Martin DB7 Volante. In total, only 7,000 cars of this brand were produced, and such a car costs as much as $100,000. In other words, someone actually thought that a relative of the cars of James Bond is not worth anything, and turned it into scrap metal. For less sophisticated readers, it is worth noting that not so rare, but no less expensive cars, such as Corvettes, Mustangs and even Camaros, were given up for scrap. This means that someone has scrapped the Hornet itself, Bumblebee. The first edition of the Harry Potter book. To date, there are only about 300 to 500 books of the first edition of Harry Potter, depending on which source you believe. In addition to the fact that each of these books is valued at $50,000, and this amount is sure to grow over time, it is also the Holy Grail, both for fans of Harry Potter and for literary lovers. Nigel Reynolds was the first person to interview J.K. Rowling before her book made so much noise. During the interview, Rowling gave Reynolds a copy of the book Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone as a thank you, which Reynolds immediately threw out as soon as he went to his office. And here's what's most annoying: Reynolds didn't even bother to wait and see if Rowling's book would be a success. Instead, after doing the simplest thing imaginable at the time, which was nothing, Reynolds decided to throw the book away, instead of seeing if the author he just had interviewed had produced a good book. In any case, he didn't have to wait long, because less than a year after the interview, Reynolds was standing in line to buy for his son a copy of Harry Potter, which hasn't been a first edition and hasn't been signed by Rowling herself. Hospital that threw away a kidney. Of all the items on our list, The item described in this paragraph is probably the most precious, since we have never met a person who could appreciate a human life without making the rest of us slowly retreat to the back of the room, calling the police. This story is that Paul Fudix Jr. donated one of his kidneys for a transplant in an attempt to save the life of his older sister. Her brother represented the only chance of finding the perfect donor. Therefore, the importance and value of his sacrifice is simply priceless. However, the accident happened when a nurse in the hospital threw the kidney in the trash without checking if it was actually needed by someone. Fortunately, the patient was lucky enough to get another kidney from another donor, and her first step as a healthy woman after the operation was to sue the hospital. Instead of throwing money away and apologizing to the Fudix family as long as their grandkids would ride motorcycles, the hospital heroically asked them to withdraw the lawsuit, as they said it was not a terrible negligence. If removing a kidney from a person, as it turned out, without any reason is not a terrible negligence, it is terrible to even imagine what, in their opinion, it is. The huge amount of discarded art. The object of art Gustav Metzler was thrown out when it was on display in the museum gallery Tate Modern. Tate Modern, when someone took the lying plastic bag for what it is, and not part of the work of Gustav. In justification of this person, we can say that the package was on the floor, next to another work of art, so the person naturally decided that it was a garbage bag. In the same museum, another bag of garbage, which was also, for some reason, a valuable masterpiece of art, was thrown out by a janitor, who mistook it for garbage thrown by an unconscious museum visitor. A janitor from Germany repeated this mistake when he accidentally cleaned a dirty bucket, worth several $1,000s, that was on display, not knowing that the stains on the bucket were carefully applied paint. And in London, an improvised work by Damien Hirst, which literally consisted of empty beer bottles scattered around the museum, was completely destroyed by a museum employee. A poor worker who is horribly underpaid was just trying to do his job. If any artist reading this article will allow us to make a modest note, we will note that such incidents would happen much less often if artists stopped throwing beer bottles around the museum, calling them unnamed work and then leaving. This is so, note. The artist who burned more than $1 million. The K Foundation was a duo consisting of two artists, Bill Drummond and Jimmy Cauty. Although the pair were able to achieve relative success as musicians in a band called the KLF, their true passion has always been in art. However, instead of drawing beautiful pictures or throwing things around the museum, the couple decided to do something much more extravagant. Aptly named the K Foundation Burn a Million Quid, the couple collected literally every penny they ever earned and burned the money in an abandoned boat shed. We would very much like to explain the reason for this action, but none of them could give it, despite the fact that this question was asked at every interview they gave after this outburst. Before you catch your phone the next time you drop it in the toilet, just remember there are guys who have burned more than $1 million for absolutely no reason. Which thing surprised you the most? We are waiting for your comments and likes. Share the video with your friends and parents, they also will be interested. We hope the information was useful and exciting. Thank you for your activity and viewing. See you in the next video.